Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to do that.
We've got beer. We're going to get loose. So I'm Erica. I'm with Rocky Mountain Wild. And this is...
Hey, I'm Kim. I'm with the Wilderness Society.
We didn't practice this.
Yeah.
Back
And we're gonna guide you tonight through what we're calling our Public Lands Defense Workshop. We also have Dally from Audubon Society over here, and she's got there's a bunch of awesome swag over there. We'd also love for you guys to sign up so we know how you heard about this, and to also sign up so that we can keep pestering you with information. So make sure you do that.
empowering
With information.
you.
Yes. So how this is going to work is I'm going to take the first half, and then Kim is going to take the second half. And so I'm going to give you a rundown of what's going on, who's doing what, and then Kim is going to help guide you through actually writing a comment in real time, so we get to practice together. Sound good? Cool.
Yeah, just really quick, we'll introduce our organization so you know who we are. So really quick, the Wilderness Society, we're a national organization and we work to protect wild places all across the country. And that's not just wilderness, it's all of our federal public lands. And we have staff all over the place, so I'm based in our Denver office, which is just 2 blocks that way.
Yes, and we are much smaller. Rocky Mountain Wild is a staff of 8. And we are all here in Denver, but we do a lot of work, primarily in Colorado, but across the greater West, and we'll get into that in a minute. So I also just here.
Hi, I'm Dolly. I'm with Audubon Rockies, which is a regional office of National Audubon Society covering Wyoming and Colorado. And this is an awesome crowd, so excited you guys are here. It means a lot to us when we're in this every day dealing, fighting, to make sure we have really good, healthy public lands. To have you guys come and join us tonight, that means a lot, so thank you.
Yes, thank you guys so much for being here. And I want to give another quick thank you to Patagonia and all of the staff here, and just Patagonia in general for being so supportive of our work and just letting us have this space. So thank you, Patagonia. All right, we're gonna kick it off. Okay, so how much do you really love public lands? We like to say that a lot in the state, right? Like, I love public lands, I love recreating on public lands. But I kind of like to think about it, actually, my boyfriend's the one that came up with this analogy. If you really like a guy or a girl, do you text them or do you call them? Or if you really want a job, do you just send kind of a blanket resume, or do you really hand tailor and handcraft a cover letter? That's basically what we're doing tonight, right? Like those petitions that you hit the send, you sign and send, those are cool, but the most effective thing is something super personal from you. And so that's what we're doing. We're gonna take it back, pull the landline out, and do this thing. So that's what this is all about. Cool. Okay, so just let's go high level here. What are public lands? I think a lot of us like to think about parks and monuments. Totally, that's right. But it's a lot more than that. Thank you, Wilderness Society, for these awesome maps. The dark areas you can see are designated wilderness, whereas the lighter green areas are a shared bank of just, what we call our federal lands that can be U.S. Forest Service, BLM lands, national parks, Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a lot. It's 640 million acres. You can see it's mostly just all our backyard. And of those 640 million acres, 90% of that is available for extractive purposes, which is a lot. Only 10% is actually, set aside for conservation. So that 90% is a lot that organizations like ours basically safeguard, protect, and kind of are constantly watching. So that's a little bit of that. This is a really gnarly map. If you can see up here, it starts in 1920, and this is oil and gas and extractive development throughout the Greater West. It's a bloodbath. So, standing rock and getting hit with rubber bullets, like how can we get 5,000 steps in front of a bulldozer? That's really what tonight's about. So I think all these visuals help kind of paint this picture for you. So I really thought this was pretty cool. Wilderness Society just did a massive study this year, and it was all about how if US public lands were their own country, they would rank 5th in the world for greenhouse gas emissions, which is pretty astounding. I mean, when you look at this, this is another kind of high level, like not only are these different values, it's habitat and whatnot, it's also just doesn't really make that much sense economically to be doing this. Wasting billions of dollars on gas that's, you know, flared at the wellhead intentionally, that's kind of lame. It's a lot of cars we could be powering with all this wasted gas, and these are all things that you can also always put in your comment. And Wilderness Society has a great study if you visit their website called In the Dark. They're the ones that publish this because this isn't stuff that the federal government is tracking for us, right? Like, they're not transparent about this stuff. Wilderness Society spent years gathering this data for us, and I think it's really important to make that point when it's like, this is what we're using our lands for. It doesn't totally always add up. So, what is the BLM and what do they do? Because that's what we're going to be talking about a lot tonight. I know I showed you on that map this bank that's US Forest Service, BLM, all that, but we're kind of hyper-focusing tonight on BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and oil and gas on our public lands because we kind of collectively feel that that's the biggest threat to our public lands right now. And I copied and pasted the mission statement of the BLM. You know, it's kind of dry, but it's basically the same as US Forest Service or a lot of our government agencies, in that I think it's really important to make the distinction that BLM and US Forest Service do not conserve, they're not conservation organizations, right? Their job isn't to preserve land, their job is to manage land and to manage our resources. And so what that means to them is they're trying to kind of, you know, make sure that recreation is represented on US Forest Service and BLM land. Agriculture and energy is definitely part of that. Like at Recommend Wild, we just call this sector of our work responsible development. We understand we all drove cars or use energy to get here, we just want to be doing this responsibly. And right now, there's a lot of top-down pressure to be very dominant. We want to be energy dominant. That's not just something like we make up as tree huggers. The BLM puts that on their press releases. I just grabbed this from their website last night. Department of the Interior promotes energy dominance, not just energy independence, like energy dominance as in this is the best use of our federal public lands is extractive industries, and I think a lot of us would tend to disagree with that point of view, and we would just like to be more balanced, a little bit more fair. Not only that 90% open to extraction number, but also like, you know, maybe that's not the best use. I think we've also seen in recent years with the establishment of outdoor recreation industry being able to prove that economically it just doesn't make sense with outdoor rec being a more viable, sustainable model for what, you know, the use of our public lands are. And, you know, it's pretty detailed and nuanced, all of this is. But, you know, I think if you're like, well, how are they doing this? I don't know if you guys have been watching the news lately, but trying to undo the Endangered Species Act, trying to undo a lot of stuff put, you know, in the 70s, shortening our comment periods on the stuff I'm about to show you guys tonight. Deregulating, you know, I think we should know what's in fracking water. I think that we should have emissions. And I think that we can also prove that, you know, these regulations haven't cost the economy. We've had a very steadily growing economy in the United States since the 70s with these regulations in place. And so we just, yeah, we like using science and law to use our voice as citizens. And that's what we're doing tonight. So just a little bit of background on all of that. Also, one more thing. I know you guys are all smart peeps out there, but just a refresher. When you're on BLM land, when you see that little upside down triangle, that's when you're on that. It's typically, you know, more dispersed camping, kind of wilder places, but a lot of our monuments and parks were at one point BLM land. So yeah. So we're talking about oil and gas leases. What does it mean to lease land? Think about, you sign a lease when you rent, right? Or you lease a car. It's like you're borrowing something. You know, you're paying some money to borrow something and then you give it back. So basically, the BLM, I call it, it's like squares within squares, because we have these square-shaped states and then we have these little square-shaped parcels. within the states that the BLM says, okay, here's some land that I think would be great for oil and gas development. We're gonna put that out there. And like, who knows about the one that just is happening right now? We're in the process with the Great Sand Dunes. Cool. So the BLM, earlier this year was like, here's, several hundred acres down by Great Sand Dunes National Park. These are some leases that we think would be great for extractive industry. And here you go, world. And basically, all of these leases, they have to follow the law. And the law states that, if the BLM is putting out a lease for an oil and gas company to obtain the rights to drill on, we have to make sure that there's no endangered species that lives there, that it's not close to a water source. There are a lot of laws. It all follows under what we call NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, and you guys don't need to know that. That's our job to get in the nitty-gritty of that. But that's something that we want to help you guys understand a little bit, because really, I'm just going to keep harping on this. It's your right as an American citizen to know this stuff, and it's part of the democratic process for you to know and empower yourselves. Like, this is the law. It's the law that if you want to drill next to Great Sand Dunes National Park, you need to see, does it have conflicts with tribes? Does it have conflicts with native cutthroat trout habitat? How close is it to a national park? Like, all of these things that we're going to show you. So I just think knowing that that process is important. And I also think it's a little bit pathetic that these lands can be leased for as little as $1.50 an acre. You can't even get an Americano for that price. I mean, that's crazy. So I personally think they've got a higher value than that, and I think you guys all do too. So this is where we come in, is knowing a little bit of this stuff, this background info, before I launch into how you can use it. Okay, that's a sad sight. It's a dead SageGrouse in oil and gas land, but that's really what happens. So Rocky Mountain Wild, our organization, we screen every new lease in all of those states, right here in Colorado, next door in Utah, up in Wyoming, down in New Mexico, Nevada, and Montana. It's a tall order, and that's really where we can use your guys' help, because yes, we can write really effective, detailed comments, but it means a lot when you guys use your voice as well. So basically, what we do is we have a massive database of all sorts of endangered and threatened species, and we're not talking about just sage-grouse, we're talking about like the Graham's pinstemon. I didn't even know that existed. It's a cool plant out in like Utah. So yeah, you can save a parcel of land based on a plant. It's true. And I think that's actually awesome. You can learn a lot more about the places that you love just by kind of seeing what's out there and seeing, using those laws I just spoke to leverage reasons why this lease should be deferred. And yeah, I just think that one thing that really needs to be touched on as well about the whole democracy piece is the BLM and the Forest Service, their job is they're government, right? They are for the people, by the people. And unfortunately, right now, we have a lot of former oil and gas lobbyists and executives essentially running the country. So basically the interests of those corporations are usually coming first or above your voice. And so it's just never been a more important, critical time to engage in this process. Democracy doesn't mean voting every 4 years for a new president. It means engaging in this stuff right here, right now. And I always like to say, those guys don't have opposing thumbs to type these things to the BLM, so we gotta do it for them. So, like that sage-grouse is telling you. Specifically, actually, just so you guys know, we harp a lot on sage-grouse. It's something that's a kind of an angle as conservation organizations, because this is easy to see, but there are hundreds of other organisms living in that habitat, right? But these huge wellheads and these lights and things, it really is disruptive to this animal and lots of other wildlife out there. So that's, just kind of a side note, I guess. But yeah, basically what we're doing right now is we are telling the BLM how we want our land managed. This is the most effective action, and this is kind of disheartening, but something like Keystone XL, it's pretty much gonna go through no matter what. I mean, they could find Elvis's body under Keystone XL and they might move the pipe 400 meters or something, because once a company has the permit to drill in their hand, it is nearly impossible to stop that process. So as much as these details and nuances are really laborious, it's the most effective thing you can do. Because once, like I said, they've got that permit, it's going down, it's gonna happen. So we have to get in there, do the nitty-gritty work while there's absolutely nothing there, and tell the BLM, no more. I like it, and because it's so preventative, I like to think of it as your activist vitamin or your probiotic. It's the preventative medicine. And it's more effective than a blanket petition. Unfortunately, if we get, whenever you sign those change.org petitions, they just count as one. So even though there's 20 signatures, that language is the same, so it just counts as one. So even if you just write 3 sentences, this doesn't have to be an incredible science, essay. It is an original comment. The BLM is required by law to read your comment and address it. Not necessarily to you, but internally amongst themselves, right? And both Kim and I were just talking about this the other day. We've both been in a courtroom. I heard a judge expressly say, there are 900 comments in opposition to this project. And that was a case we won. It was a case Rocky Mountain Wild was a part of against a massive Vail-sized resort on Wolf Creek Pass, and 900 people commented against that project. And no, the judge didn't read all 900 comments, but he was very well aware that 900 people felt strongly enough to actually use their voice that it definitely was taken into consideration. So I want to share that with you because it works. It is effective. It does put a lot of pressure on the BLM to do their job, and their job is to respect lots of different viewpoints about how land is managed. Yeah?
So you're saying that like with the change.org petition, if there are 900 people that have the same comment, like why does there comment as 900 people behind that comment?
Because the language is the same. So what I'm saying is, when the BLM, if they see a change.org, it's addressed, it goes into their email box every time somebody hits it, but it's the same language. So the language is saying, it's probably something nuanced and sciencey, but they're like, okay, I know it's in this, I've seen it, so it's one comment, right? So like, if your original comment is just slightly different than that one, then it's a different comment. Does that make sense? I know it's a little bit weird, but...
Well, but are you saying that like it's officially recorded as one comment,
yes,
or it only impacts the individual that's reading it as one comment?
The second one is a little more psychos. I don't know. I mean, I think that, to your point, it's not pointless to not sign those. Like, I think it does make a difference if somebody's sitting in a field office and they're like, oh my God, 5,000 people signed this thing, and so people really care. It does make a difference for sure. You should do both. Just Kim's gonna add something to
Well,
that.
I just think the really important thing is like, signing those are so critically important, and even if you do a form comment, it's really important. What happens with like BLM comments is they categorize comments in like a Excel document. And so if it's the same, they'd be like 1, and then in the like details of it, they'd be like 10,000 people commented on this thing, all the same like content. So they only read that once, but then that's so important because then our organizations can say like, oh, X 100,000 people commented to protect these national monuments, and we can use that in the media, and we can use that, every step along the way, and they will say, yes, that many people did comment, but it's like only on one thing, right? It's very weird. It still matters, but that is the reality.
Yeah, it definitely still matters, and you should do it. You should change.org, sign it all day. You should do both, because the truth is, I think also we're in a really cool time when social media makes this stuff like spread like wildfire. So if that is all you can do, totally. Or if it's just like bait to reel somebody into this next step, like awesome. It's a great question, because it is bizarre, and I mean, like, yeah, everything matters, but, you know, if you can, I'm about to show you what it looks like, then that I think also even just feels a little bit better, where you're like, dang, I got in there and I told the Moab field office that this exact parcel is within 10 miles of Arches National Park, and that's why they shouldn't do it. You're gonna be like, oh man. And also, sometimes it's also just like, you know, yeah, it's an accountability thing, and it's showing citizens are paying attention to specifically what you're doing. So that's a great question. Okay, so real quickly, this is kind of a brief overview, and on our Oil and Gas Toolkit for Activists on RockyMountainWild.org, we have this really great like sticky comment checklist that kind of regurgitates a bit of this and gets into a little bit more detail. But, so what does this comment look like? That's what we're talking about, right? Well, these are some kind of basic things that every one of your comments can address without even getting super specific. Like I just said, oh, it's within 10 miles of a national park. Hey guys, BLM, I'm concerned about climate change. Are you guys taking into consideration the fact that, you know, all the stuff that we just referenced, you know, there's wasted gas, like there's no carbon capping, like that kind of thing. You can speak to that even just generally. I think that this aerial photo is really, you know, kind of shocking to speak to the next couple points, which is it's not just the extractive industry, it's all of the infrastructure it takes to get there. It's the roads and the bulldozers and the noise and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, this is a wellhead, but then you had to make all these roads to get here and here and here and here. So, you know, that's something you can always mention in your comment. You can always mention, as I spoke to earlier, you know, this study a couple of years ago that, you know, just said blatantly outdoor rec jobs are outweighing oil and gas jobs 3-to-1 in the West. So this just doesn't make sense for us in the long term. A personal experience goes a long way. I don't want oil and gas leasing to take place at Great Sand Dunes National Park because I recreate there, and I'm concerned about the air quality. Boom, that's one sentence. Like, you don't really have, you can do more than that, but even if that's all you did, great. Yeah, use science, use Google. I'm about to show you guys, walk you through our Oil and Gas Toolkit for Activists. But also just keep it professional, watch your grammar. I know we're all a bunch of passionate people in here and we're drinking, but just keep the expletives out, right? No. So yeah, that's just kind of the high level of general comments, and then I'm going to step over and walk you through our Oil and Gas Toolkit, and I want to give Patagonia another shout out because they gave us a grant to develop this toolkit for you guys. And then Kim's going to take it over and walk through what a comment looks like, and at that point you guys can get out your computers and kind of walk through it with her, or maybe a phone isn't the easiest thing, but we also have some laptops up here after she's done to help you with this. And also, all the stuff I'm about to talk you through, you'll be like, how the hell can I remember that? You don't have to, because I just made a tutorial today that's like 10 minutes long, so that the next time there's an oil and gas lease sale and you were like, what do I do? You can just hop on and look at this really quick 10-minute tutorial of like where to go. Because, you know, signing up on this sheet is important because these lease sales are continuously happening. The one I'm walking through tonight, unfortunately, the comment period closed today at 4:30, but it was one of the largest lease sales that's ever happened in Utah, like ever. So you'll get many chances to practice on doing this. But if you sign up for our alerts, that'd be awesome. And even if you ignore it 3 times and you do it the 4th time, that's cool. Like, just, you know, keep at it. So yeah, let me just jump back here and use the computer real quick. Okay, so you will go to RockyMountainWild.org. And like I said, all of this stuff is you don't have to remember all this, but it's cool to just see, now that you know all this high-level stuff, what it looks like. So you go to Oil and Gas Watch, and on the Oil and Gas Toolbox for Activists, you can click on that, and this is a really awesome graphic that tells you a lot of the stuff I just went over, but it's good to just, refresh it, because it's a lot of stuff. And then we have this great PDF that helps you with the exact same stuff I was just talking about, like what is an effective comment. You can keep that open while you're looking. There's a glossary of terms, that's super nuanced, but let's say, like I said, there's been some huge developments taking place in Utah, and I love Utah, and I know other people do, so let's go look at Utah. So here we've got Utah. It just tells you a little thing. Oh, look, cool, Wilderness Society and Rocky Mountain Wild, great. So here's the great state of Utah. Now all these little blobs you see are oil and gas leases. The blue ones are ones that have passed, the purple ones are ones that you can be commenting on right now. And so I'm like, man, that's a big blob, let's go check that out. And as you can see, well, that looks familiar. There's a lot of leases right there next to Canyonlands and Arches, which is, who's been to those places? Anybody? Yep, pretty much everyone. And so, you know, that's something right in there. You can start in your comment. Oh, I have personal experience these places. These places hold an intrinsic value to me, and I don't believe that, you know, destroying our quality of air and water is worth it. That's right there in your comment. So let's go ahead and click on this. And basically what this is showing you is, the most important thing is right here, the Moab field office. And I'm going to show you why that's important in a second. That's where you're going to be sending your comment, is to the Moab field office, BLM. And then you've got other details up here, like, you know, this is how many acres this particular parcel I've clicked on is. It's almost 2,000. The name of the parcel, that kind of thing. So when you scroll down, though, this is just kind of nice because it's like, okay, this is a December 2018 lease sale, meaning that this lease sale will take place in the state of Utah during December. And yeah, the comments, but I actually think you can still post a comment today if you want to run home and do this, because I was just able to, I don't know, maybe it just, I don't know. It was working for me, it's working for me now, so we'll see. And this, by the way, is something that's been shortened for us, for our organizations. We were having up to 90 days to comment on these projects, and they've shortened it to 10, which is not cool, but we're still doing it. So this just gives you, a brief overview. What are these parcels that they want to lease near these national parks and places I love? Okay, 224 parcels, almost 400,000 acres, and just some kind of brief things that we found through our screening of what's wrong with this. Okay, well, there's a lot of owls that live there, and there's the Colorado pike minnow, which is a weird fish. And if you look down here, you can see, you know, this is a land with wilderness characteristic, or there's proposed wilderness areas by citizens. These are all things that you should use in your comment, that you can let the BLM know. Like, I know that there's a Graham's penstemon, cool, beautiful flower that's there, that's, you know, imperiled, and that's a reason enough to not lease this land for oil and gas. So now that we've kind of seen this, let's go ahead and open up. We see when our comment is due and the day it's due. We're going to click on there. It's like, okay, there's additional information here. There we see more about keeping with the administration's goal of strengthening America's energy independence. But we don't want that. Maybe we do, just with solar. So you click on documents, and you can see a little bit more about it here. BLM's telling you, these are all the parcels we want to lease, yada yada. And there's so many that they have, like, myriad different, different field offices. But if we go back to this map, and we're like, well, we just saw that these parcels right here are at the Moab field office. Then you can go back here, see Moab Field Office. Oh, I'm going to comment on that document. So in here, you would just, put in here, I'm going to put this down for a second.
December 2018 lease sale. To whom it may concern.
Basically, this is where you're going to start putting in your comments right here. And so we talked about the very high level stuff. I'm concerned about I'm concerned about emissions on public lands, that kind of thing. But this is when things get interesting and detailed. But you guys are in it to win it, I can tell. So here we go. So what you're going to do is once you've kind of done this work, all right, I see where the lease is taking place in Utah. I've kind of identified what I'm not okay with and who to talk to. You're going to scroll down here past the different things that we're kind of telling you, and you're going to get specific, and you're actually going to look at the parcels. You're going to click on this thing that says Abby Screen, a spreadsheet showing conflicts between proposed parcels and wildlife. This is a beast. It is incredible that we have this, but we know what lives on all of those parcels, and that's just, to me, it's amazing. It's like, oh my God, we know that there's like this crazy fish that lives there and it needs help. So instead of scrolling through this, let's use our Finder tool, Apple F, and we're just gonna search for Moab, because we know that's the field office we want. We know those parcels are there. Boom, Moab Field Office. Okay, so even if this isn't, the exact parcel that you're looking at, if you zoom out, these, these go to the Moab Field Office, and they're way up there, and that's to Vernal. But either way, if you love Utah, the stuff that's in the Moab Field Office is going to be generally around this region. So you can go back and forth and look and see, like, oh, that's that parcel if you want, but you also don't have to. You can just say, okay, here's a parcel number right here. Like this on the left, these are the parcel IDs of those, like I said, the squares within squares. This column right here is the field office you're going to be talking to. These are really specific that maybe other science-minded people are more interested in. I don't think you guys really need to say, like, I think you should avoid through micrositing. Just say, I really think you should consider removing this parcel from your lease sale. That's all you need to say. And this is why. Well, because the Colorado pike minnow and the razorback sucker live there. So we're going to copy and paste that. Those two species. Put them in here. And then we're going to say, okay, those two species, the pike minnow and the razorback sucker, Moab Field Office, they are on this parcel number. Copy, paste it over here. So, just so you know, this UTFWS, this just means that we're referencing a Utah Fish and Wildlife study in '94. So I think you should just copy and paste it because, BLM's like, oh, they're really paying attention, like to this study that says that these things live here. So this is, I'm just giving you a really quick example of the specifics, but obviously you would also put in your own stuff in here, like I recreate here, I believe we should keep it in the ground, those types of things. But that's really it. I mean, it is detailed, but I think once you guys do this once, you'll be able to get it. And it is amazing that we have this type of ability and data. We live in an age where we can say, no more, and this is why. Like, yeah, because it's a place that people recreate, but also because these species live there. So yeah, and all of this is going to be available on Rocky Mountain Wild's website so that, whenever you leave here and you're like, what was it I just learned? What is the BLM? You can come back and refresh your memory and know how to do this and tell all your friends and have cool activist parties. And